They kicked her out, and karma came fast. Karoline Leavitt, rising political firebrand and former White House press secretary, walked into her favorite local restaurant with her husband, Nicholas Riccio, just hoping to enjoy a quiet evening. But instead of a warm welcome, they were met with cold stares, and then denied service outright by a manager with a clear political agenda. Just 7 minutes later, the unthinkable happened. The restaurant, once thriving, faced a shocking and very public collapse. Coincidence? Maybe. But for many watching, it felt like poetic justice. This isn't just another viral headline. It's a powerful example of how politics and personal freedom are clashing more than ever in everyday America. Before we dive into the full story, drop a comment with where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the moments mainstream media won't touch. The Cadillac rolled down Lexington Avenue, its deep engine hum muffled beneath the rhythm of New York City's nighttime pulse. Inside, beneath the warm leather canopy, sat Karoline Leavitt, America's youngest White House press secretary. Her eyes flickered across her phone, swiping through headlines, emails, and briefings with that familiar steel-eyed focus only a battlefield-trained communicator could carry. But tonight wasn't supposed to be about politics, at least not in theory. Beside her sat her husband, Nicholas Riccio, sharp suit, silver at his temples, calm in his demeanor, a real estate veteran who'd closed deals others only dreamed of. He leaned toward her now, brushing a warm hand over hers, his voice breaking the current of digital static between them. "Put it away for a while, honey," he said softly. "Tonight's ours." Karoline glanced over, a faint smile tugging at her lips. She slipped the phone into her purse but didn't let go of her edge. "Just one peaceful dinner," she muttered, "one without headlines waiting to explode." Nicholas chuckled. "And I want that steak you always say is overhyped." Their destination was the Hearth and Oak, a posh yet cozy Manhattan gem, nestled between modern towers and ivy-covered brick. They'd celebrated everything here, from campaign milestones to anniversary toasts. This wasn't just another restaurant. It was their place. As the car pulled to a soft halt under the glowing entrance sign, Karoline stepped out, heels tapping a familiar rhythm against the pavement. She adjusted her cream-colored coat, her eyes quickly scanning the surroundings. It was a reflex by now. Nicholas joined her at the curb, his hand finding hers instinctively. "Still scanning the battlefield?" he teased. "Old habit," she replied, her tone light, but her expression unflinching. Inside, Hearth and Oak hadn't changed. Golden sconces still bathed the walls in candlelight hues. The smell of rosemary butter and seared meat curled through the air like memory. It was a room that had once cheered their arrival. But tonight, something felt off. As they approached the host stand, a tall figure in a fitted slate-gray blazer emerged. His name tag read Damian Lang, General Manager. Around 40, well-groomed, his posture polite but tight. "Mrs. Leavitt, Mr. Riccio." His smile was tight. "I'm afraid we won't be able to serve you tonight." The sentence fell like a stone between them. Karoline blinked. "Excuse me?" Damian folded his hands before him. "We've had a number of concerns expressed about your presence here. We're trying to avoid making the evening uncomfortable for other guests." Karoline's jaw tightened, her tone measured, professional, deadly. "What exactly are you saying?" Damian hesitated. "Some patrons expressed they would feel unsafe dining in the same space due to your political affiliation and recent media appearances." Nicholas's nostrils flared slightly. "Unsafe? Because my wife works for the President of the United States?" Damian's voice remained soft, rehearsed. "This is a private establishment, Mr. Riccio. We reserve the right—" "Don't," Karoline said sharply, eyes locked on his. "Don't wrap cowardice in policy." People were watching now, diners turning their heads. A waiter paused mid-pour. A phone quietly lifted across the room, camera light glowing faintly. Karoline lowered her voice, but not the intensity. Do you mean to tell me that because I work for a man half this country voted for, I'm not allowed to eat dinner in peace? Damien didn't answer. Nicholas stepped forward. We've been coming here for years. We've never caused trouble. We've tipped well, smiled, shook hands. You know that. I do, Damien replied, voice tight. But recently a group of patrons made it clear they'd walk out if you entered, and post about it, loudly. Karoline let out a cold laugh, the kind forged from years of press ambushes. So this is about fear, not values. Damien sighed. I have a business to run. If you'll allow us, we can seat you privately. Back room, candlelight, no one will bother you. Karoline looked around. Every table, every warm light, every polished glass. It had once felt like home, and now it felt like a courtroom. No, she said. We don't hide. Her voice rose, not in anger but in clarity. Let me get this straight. We've walked into this restaurant, said nothing political, asked for a meal, and you're refusing us because of who I work for. Damien's voice cracked for the first time. Mrs. Leavitt, please. I'm trying to protect the restaurant. From who? Karoline fired back. From paying, respectful guests? Or from a handful of Twitter activists with pitchforks and hashtags? More phones lifted. Conversations hushed. Whispers turned to murmurs. Some diners leaned in with interest. Others shifted uncomfortably. Nicholas turned toward her. Karoline, we can leave. She shook her head slowly. Number, they need to see this. And with that, she pulled her phone from her coat pocket. Live recording. Her voice, steady and strong, filled the quiet air like a gavel in court. Hi everyone, Karoline Leavitt here. Tonight my husband and I walked into one of our favorite restaurants, a place we've supported for years, and were denied service because of my political beliefs. Gasps. A fork clattered to a plate. Damien went pale. Please, don't do this. Let's not turn this into a scene. Karoline didn't flinch. I'm not turning this into anything. You did. I'm just making sure the truth doesn't get buried under a napkin of excuses. A woman across the room stood up, mid-50s, gray hair in a neat bob, wearing a cross around her neck. This is ridiculous, she said loudly. I've seen her here before. She's always been respectful. What are you doing, Damien? Damien stammered. Ma'am, please sit down. But it was too late. The room had turned. A young busboy at the side whispered to a server, That's her? That's the press secretary. I saw her on C-SPAN. Karoline continued speaking to the stream. What happened to civility? To decency? We didn't walk in chanting slogans or wearing campaign shirts. We came here, like anyone, to share a meal. Another diner stood. If you're throwing them out, I'm leaving too. Same here, added a man in his 70s, rising slowly with the help of his cane. Damien looked around. The walls were closing in. Nicholas stepped closer to the manager. Calm, clear. You know, I nearly invested in this place 3 years ago. Solid location, great kitchen. But if this is the direction you're heading, alienating loyal customers for temporary applause online, then you're burning the bridge in the boat. A ripple of applause scattered across the room. Karoline lowered her phone, her voice quieter now yet firmer. You want to talk about inclusion? She asked. Try starting with not excluding people over politics. Damien rubbed his forehead, the reservation book trembling slightly in his hand. We'll still offer the private room, he said weakly. We're not hiding in the back like criminals, Nicholas said, cutting him off. You've made your decision, Karoline added. Now watch what comes of it. And then, something none of them expected. One of the waitresses stepped forward, mid-20s, Nervous eyes, but a steady voice. Miss Leavitt, I'm sorry, I don't agree with this. I don't think it's right. Damien's eyes widened. Melissa, but the waitress gently removed her apron, folded it, and laid it on the bar. I can't work here if this is who we are now. Silence, then a second voice. I'm out too, said the bartender. They always treated us well. This is shameful. More murmurs. The tables were no longer full of diners. They were full of questions. Who's right? Who's wrong? Who's next? Karoline reached for Nicholas's hand. Let's go, she said. He nodded, but before turning, she faced the camera one last time. They tried to silence us with policy. They tried to humiliate us in public. But here's what they didn't count on. We won't go quietly. And with that, she ended the stream. The screen faded to black. But the echoes of her voice, the conviction, the calm outrage, lingered long after the Cadillac pulled away from the curb. Back inside the Hearth and Oak, Damien Lang stood still at the podium. A dozen guests had left. 2 staff members had walked out. Phones continued buzzing. And the air, it had changed. Not just because of what Karoline said, but because of what people felt. It started as a murmur, a soft ripple of disbelief that crept through the ornate corners of Hearth and Oak, like smoke in a velvet room. Damien Lang stood paralyzed behind the reservation podium, his fingers still resting on the edge of the leather-bound guest book, like it could anchor him to something, anything solid. But in that moment, nothing felt solid. Not the walls, not the polished floor beneath him, not even his carefully rehearsed decision. He had thought this would blow over. He was wrong. The second Karoline and Nicholas walked out that door, a wave crashed into the restaurant's glass heart. The first tremor came when the older couple who had stood up in defense of Karoline now silently gathered their coats and followed her out. No fanfare, just dignity. Then came the server, Melissa, her apron still neatly folded where she left it. The bartender followed moments later, shaking his head as he glanced back toward the manager who had once promised a safe space for all. And then the phones began to buzz. It was almost imperceptible at first, a faint chiming, a vibration against purses, tables, suit pockets. But in seconds, it became a wave of motion, people lifting their phones, eyes widening, screens glowing. A middle-aged man at table 6 turned to his wife, mouth slightly agape. It's trending. What is? He showed her the screen. Stand with Karoline, Georgian, Boycott Hearth and Oak, Chash, Political Discrimination Live in real time. Thousands, no, tens of thousands, were watching the clip of Karoline's live stream as it spread like fire through digital corridors. People weren't just outraged, they were organizing. Inside the restaurant, some guests began to murmur to each other. Confusion rippled through the room, then discomfort. Then came the tipping point. A man in a well-fitted gray jacket stood slowly, his silver hair catching the low chandelier glow. He held his phone high and read aloud. White House press secretary denied service at Manhattan restaurant over political views. Staff resign. Customers walk out. He looked around, eyes locked on Damien. You just made national headlines. Damien's mouth opened to respond, but no sound came. His assistant manager, Fiona, approached quickly. You want me to pull the live stream feeds? We're on 2 local news radars already. He blinked. What? Look at this, she said, thrusting her tablet in front of him. Fox News picked it up, and the Post just called it a public meltdown of woke management. Tell them we're issuing a clarification, Damien muttered, stumbling over his words like a man who just realized the ice beneath him is not just cracking, but gone. Fiona shook her head, her voice sharper now. You didn't issue anything. Karoline did, and she did it live. They got the narrative. A group of diners, once enjoying their appetizers, stood, gathering their things quietly. We'll take our business elsewhere, one of them said, throwing a glance toward Damien that carried more weight than 100 Yelp reviews. By now, half the tables were visibly shaken. Some were leaving, some filming. All were watching. From the open kitchen, the head chef Marco emerged. Tall, weathered from years behind a hot flame, with a stained apron and a deep crease in his brow. "What's happening out there?" he asked, eyes scanning the thinning room. Damien tried to keep control. "It's under control." "No, it's not," Marco replied. "You just kicked out two of the most loyal customers we had, and the staff is walking out." Damien's voice cracked. "I was protecting the restaurant. The backlash would have ruined us if they stayed." Marco's nostrils flared. "You think this is better?" He pulled off his apron slowly, deliberately. "I've made steaks for them since their engagement dinner. I watched them toast over wine after she won her primary, and now you've treated them like political garbage. Because you couldn't handle some Twitter noise?" Damien took a step forward. "Marco, please, not you too." But Marco wasn't listening anymore. He turned to the kitchen and barked, "Everyone, off the line!" "Shut it down." A beat of stunned silence followed, then motion. Knives clanked onto cutting boards. Pans were lifted off burners. Gas knobs turned off with faint hisses. A young sous chef pulled off his apron and whispered to Marco, "I'm with you." So did another. Then two more. The smell of rosemary and sizzling fat evaporated, replaced with something heavier, more final. Damien turned to Fiona. "Say something. Stop them." But Fiona didn't move. Her eyes stayed fixed on the servers, whispering among themselves, on the customers watching, on the doors swinging open, again and again, with people walking out, not in. And then, a woman in a red blazer near the bar stood with slow, deliberate grace. She was in her 60s, pearls around her neck, dignity etched into every movement. "I've been dining here since you opened," she said calmly, "but I'll never eat in a place that turns away good people over politics." She lifted her purse, turned, and walked out, heels echoing with quiet finality. A younger man nearby muttered to his friend, "This is what happens when you play PR games with real people's lives." "Yeah," the friend replied, eyes on the door. "Karoline didn't make a scene. She made a stand." In the corner, a progressive couple remained seated, but their energy had shifted. Gone was the smug certainty. Now? A flicker of doubt. The woman's hand hovered near her wine glass, then withdrew. "Maybe this wasn't handled well," she said quietly. Her partner frowned. "I didn't expect it to go viral." But it had. Within 30 minutes, national anchors began debating the fallout. Fox News panel. If Karoline Leavitt can be denied a meal simply for doing her job, what hope is there for any American who holds conservative views? CNN roundtable. Was this poor management or political censorship? Either way, Hearth and Oak is hemorrhaging goodwill. That night, the phone at the front desk rang off the hook. First, it was regulars canceling reservations, then sponsors, then a corporate investor. Damien listened to the cold voice on the other end of the line. "You've cost us our brand, our contracts, our reputation." Click. No goodbye. Fiona returned moments later with a report. "We've lost 400 followers on Yelp, negative reviews flooding in, and that young server who quit, her videos already hit 500K views." He stared at her. "What video?" She handed him her phone. Melissa's voice filled the screen. "Tonight, I left my job, not because I hate this restaurant, but because it betrayed everything we were supposed to stand for." Karoline and Nicholas were kind, respectful, and loyal. We turned our backs on them because a few angry people didn't like her politics. That's not who I am, and it's not who we used to be. The comments were exploding. "Melissa, you're a hero. Just made a reservation at whatever restaurant hires you next. Shame on Hearth and Oak. I wasn't a fan of Leavitt's politics, but this was discrimination. Patriotism isn't a crime. Damien rubbed his temples, trying to shut out the growing buzz. It's just a phase. It'll pass. But Fiona shook her head, her voice low. It won't. You chose sides, and it wasn't the side of loyalty. Outside, the wind picked up, sending the American flag hanging above the front entrance into a slow, restless wave. A couple more diners exited. One of them paused near the door, looked back at the bar and muttered, "Used to be the best steak in town. Now it tastes like betrayal." Back in the kitchen, Marco stood silently in his chef's whites, staring out the back alley door as smoke curled into the night sky. The kitchen was empty now. He didn't speak to anyone, just walked away, the way soldiers do when they know the battle's already lost. In the dining room, a young employee approached Fiona hesitantly. "What do we do now?" Fiona's eyes met Damien's, and for the first time all night, he had no answer. The fall of Hearth and Oak wasn't marked by shattered windows or fire. It wasn't a crash of bricks and mortar. It was something quieter, more final. It was the collapse of trust, of loyalty, of the invisible thread that ties customers to a place, when that place forgets what it once stood for. And across the city, in a smaller, warmer restaurant, two people clinked wine glasses over dinner, welcomed by those who valued integrity more than politics. The storm wasn't over, but the eye had passed, and the wreckage was now visible for all to see. The Cadillac Escalade glided quietly down Park Avenue, the city lights trailing across its black finish like ribbons of firelight. Inside, the silence between Karoline and Nicholas wasn't heavy. It was steady, grounded, the kind of quiet that didn't come from defeat, but from decision, from a line drawn. Karoline's phone buzzed on her lap, again and again and again. She didn't even have to check. She knew what it was. She'd won the story, but her expression wasn't smug. It was solemn. She stared out the window, eyes following the blur of buildings, lamplight, faces in restaurants they passed. Some of them, no doubt, already watching the video. Some of them, perhaps, applauding what she just did. But all she could think was, how did it come to this? Nicholas finally broke the silence. "You okay?" She turned to him slowly, the fierce confidence in her eyes softening just slightly. "I'm not angry," she said. "I'm just done." He nodded. "You were brilliant in there." Karoline leaned her head against the window, her voice low. "It wasn't supposed to be a political act, Nick. I just wanted to eat dinner with my husband." "And instead," he replied, lips curling faintly, "you lit a match under a broken system." She gave a small laugh. It wasn't bitter. It was clear, honest. "You think they'll remember this?" Nicholas smiled, reaching into his coat pocket, pulling out his phone. "I think they already are." He held up the screen. The hashtag was still climbing. Donors who stand with Karoline, Sharma, boycott Hearth, and Oak, share inclusion or intimidation, over 1 million views in under an hour. He grinned. You crashed their dinner service and rewrote the definition of inclusion in 58 seconds flat. Karoline didn't reply at first. She stared back out at the city. "Then let's eat somewhere that actually values freedom." Nicholas tapped the dashboard. "Already on it." He opened a message thread and showed her the latest text. "Frank, Patriot Grill. Just saw what happened. Don't even think twice. You and Karoline always have a table here. No cameras, no judgment, just steak and truth. Come home." Karoline smiled. "Frank still runs it?" "Never left," Nicholas replied. "Because some places don't fold when the wind changes." The Escalade turned onto a quieter street lined with older brick storefronts and small lantern-lit awnings. The kind of street that smelled like stories and family. The kind of place untouched by Fashion Week or Twitter mobs. And then it appeared. Patriot Grill golden light glowed from within, dancing across frosted windows. The sign above the doorway wasn't flashy, but it stood firm, proud. A single American flag framed the entrance, swaying gently in the early evening breeze. As they stepped out of the car, the door opened before they could knock. And there he was, Frank, late 60s, silver hair slicked back, sleeves rolled, apron still dusted with flour. A wide smile stretched across his weathered face as he threw the door open with the energy of a man half his age. Karoline, Nicholas. His arms opened. Welcome home. Karoline stepped into the warm air of the restaurant. It smelled of wood smoke, aged whiskey, and grilled butter. The kind of scent that hugged you before anyone else could. Frank led them through the softly lit dining room to a booth near the fireplace. Patrons looked up as they passed, some with surprise, some with recognition, but all with respect. No phones, no whispers, just nods. Karoline sat down, her coat slipping from her shoulders. For the first time that night, her shoulders relaxed. Frank poured 2 glasses of wine, sliding them across the table. I saw the whole thing, he said, lowering his voice. That wasn't just a scene you walked into. That was a battle line. Karoline met his gaze. I wasn't trying to pick a fight. Frank shook his head. But you didn't back down from one either. That matters. Nicholas raised his glass. To restaurants that still believe in loyalty. Karoline clinked it. And to steak that doesn't come with a side of censorship. Laughter, the first real one of the night. Frank disappeared into the back, calling over his shoulder. 2 ribeyes, medium rare, and tell the kitchen this one's personal. As the clink of utensils and soft jazz filled the space around them, Karoline opened her phone again. The stream's replay was still gaining traction. But what caught her attention wasn't just the view count. It was the comments. This isn't just about dinner. This is about dignity. My grandma always told me, where you're not welcome, you're needed. Stand strong, Karoline. I'm 74 and I've never seen anything like this. Reminds me of when people used to fight back. Proud of you. Karoline scrolled in silence. Nicholas leaned closer. What are they saying? She turned the phone, voice soft. They're calling it a turning point. He took her hand across the table. Maybe it is. Suddenly, Frank reappeared with 2 sizzling plates, the aroma sending a hush of anticipation through the booth. He set them down like sacred offerings. Tonight's on me, he said. Consider it a small token for reminding folks that principle still matters. Karoline looked up at him. You don't have to do that. No, Frank replied, eyes steady. But I get to. That's the difference between us and them. A voice rose from a nearby table. A woman, maybe in her early 70s, soft gray curls, eyes like steel. Karoline, she asked gently. Karoline turned, standing slightly. Yes? The woman smiled and raised her glass. My husband and I watched the whole stream. We've been married 52 years. And let me tell you, there's nothing more patriotic than standing up when it's uncomfortable. Thank you. Across the room, another voice joined in. We canceled our reservation at Hearth and Oak. Found you here instead. More murmurs followed. Applause, soft at first, spread across the tables like a slow-moving wave of quiet pride. It wasn't viral, it was real. One by one, diners raised glasses, some nodding in reverence, others offering firm, approving stares. These weren't influencers. These were Americans, parents, veterans, small business owners, grandparents who had prayed over their dinners and sent grandkids to college. Karoline felt the emotions swell, not from ego, from validation. This was the America she still believed in, and now it was believing back. The fireplace crackled gently. A server refilled their water glasses. No paparazzi, No shouting, just warmth. Then Frank returned, this time not with food, but a small folded paper in his hand. "Someone left this at the counter," he said, handing it to Karoline. "Said it was for you." Karoline unfolded the note slowly. Handwritten, curved cursive, delicate strokes. "Dear Mrs. Leavitt, I'm 82 years old. I watched you get humiliated on national television, and then I watched you hold your ground. I was there during the civil rights movement. I marched. I saw restaurants try to block good people from a seat at the table. That same fight, it's happening again. And tonight you reminded me that courage isn't loud. It's clear. Thank you. Geraldine H., retired teacher, New Jersey." Karoline folded the letter slowly. Nicholas reached over and squeezed her hand. "You see," he whispered, "it was never about the restaurant. It was about the line." She nodded, a slow tear brimming but never falling. "I didn't know if people still cared," she whispered. Nicholas smiled. "They don't always speak first, but they remember who spoke for them." Across the city, Hearth and Oak was bleeding staff, reservations, and investors. But here, at a booth by the fireplace, truth was earning applause. And Karoline, she wasn't just dining. She was reminding America what dignity looked like. Back across the city, the polished exterior of Hearth and Oak no longer gleamed with confidence. By midnight, its name was a hashtag of shame. By morning, it was a warning. The digital storm had arrived. Inside the manager's office, Damian Lang sat hunched over his desk, illuminated only by the blue light of his laptop and the endless red dots on his phone screen. Voicemails, missed calls, texts, mentions, death threats, praise, boycotts, condemnation, and a single missed call from his largest investor, Alden Westmore, founder of a luxury food and beverage group that had helped fund the restaurant's last renovation. At 6:02 a.m., the callback came through. Damian answered on the first ring. "Alden, I can explain." "You don't need to explain." Alden's voice was cold. "You need to prepare for disassociation." Damian sat up straighter. "Please, this was a misunderstanding. I was trying to avoid a PR backlash." "You caused one," Alden snapped. "You kicked out the White House press secretary over politics. Then your staff walked out. Customers fled. And now, even the mayor's office is distancing themselves." "I didn't know it would go viral." "But she did," Alden interrupted. "Karoline Leavitt didn't yell. She didn't break anything. She turned on a camera, and you gave her the story." The silence on the line said it all. "I built this brand on loyalty," Alden said. "You turned it into a joke." Click. Damian slumped in his chair. Outside the office, Hearth and Oak's dining room was a shell. The morning prep crew hadn't shown. The pastry chef had submitted her resignation via email. The supplier trucks never arrived. On Yelp, 1-star reviews piled like fallen bricks. "Freedom isn't seasonal. Hearth and Oak just told half of America we're not welcome." The steak was great. The politics? Hard to swallow. On Facebook, the live stream replay from Karoline passed 12 million views. More than half the country had heard what happened, and a portion of that country would never forget it. Then came the press. Reporters from Newsmax, the Daily Caller, the New York Post, and even a few international outlets began calling. They didn't want his excuses. They wanted Karoline. At Patriot Grill, Karoline and Nicholas sat with Frank, who was laughing with his arm draped around Nicholas like they were old war buddies. "You know what makes the fall of Hearth and Oak poetic?" Frank said. "They didn't fall because of a scandal. They fell because of their own fear." Karoline was checking her messages. Her inbox was full. Veterans groups, Christian business leaders, a message from a retired Supreme Court clerk who wrote, "Your courage reminds me of the values we used to uphold in this country." Nicholas sipped his coffee and leaned back. They've already canceled over 300 reservations, he said. You know what that means? Karoline glanced up. They'll try to blame the media? Nicholas smirked. It means they're finished. And just then, her phone buzzed again. It was an invite. Live interview. Fox News. Prime time. Headline. Courage versus cancel culture. The real story from Karoline Leavitt. Frank raised his eyebrows. You gonna do it? Karoline looked around. The fireplace still flickered. Patrons still smiled. Her steak from last night was still on her mind. I'll do it, she said, but I won't just talk about what happened at the restaurant. Nicholas leaned forward. What then? She locked eyes with him. I'll talk about what's happening in America. 2 days later, Karoline walked into the Capitol, not to protest, not to grandstand, but to testify. The clip of Hearth and Oak's downfall had become more than viral. It had become symbolic. Members of Congress requested her presence, not to explain a dinner gone wrong, but to speak about the chilling reality behind it, how businesses had become battlegrounds, how people of faith, of principle, of political difference were being quietly turned away, not with chains or guards, but with passive-aggressive policies dressed up as inclusive values. And now the room was full. Karoline stood tall behind the microphone in the Senate subcommittee chamber. Behind her sat veterans, senior citizens, restaurant workers, and small business owners. Many had never stepped foot in D.C., but they were here now because someone finally gave voice to what they'd been whispering for years. My name is Karoline Leavitt, she began, and I was refused service, not because I was rude, not because I broke a rule, but because someone didn't like the name on my business card. A low murmur moved through the room. She continued, This isn't about restaurants. This is about freedom. When you say someone's not welcome because of what they believe, you're not protecting peace. You're declaring war on principle. The senators sat upright. Some tried to appear neutral, but others, especially those who'd been quietly worried about this shift, nodded. Karoline took a breath. I'm not here to shame Hearth and Oak. I'm here to shine a light on something we've all seen coming, slowly, quietly, until now. She paused, then locked eyes with the room. What happens when half the country is told to sit at the back of the restaurant again? You could hear the breath catch in people's chests. Then came the applause. Not polite, not procedural, but real. The kind that comes when a truth too long buried finally sees sunlight. Back at Patriot Grill, 2 weeks later, things looked different. Karoline and Nicholas sat at their usual booth, now unofficially known as the Liberty Table. A small brass plaque had been quietly affixed beneath the edge of the wood. Reserved for those who stand for what's right, no matter the cost. Frank brought over 2 steaks, steaming and seasoned just right. You've changed this place, he told Karoline. Not just the restaurant, the people who come here. Karoline looked around. There were veterans wearing MAGA hats, nurses still in scrubs, teachers, retirees, some black, some white, some conservative, some just tired of being told to shut up. They all had one thing in common. They came here because they knew they belonged. Nicholas held up his glass. To the truth. Karoline clinked his. To the table will never be kicked from again. The room broke into applause, and outside the sign above Patriot Grill glowed stronger than ever. While across the city, the doors of Hearth and Oak were boarded shut. A handwritten sign taped to the glass read, Closed for renovation, reopening soon. But behind the corporate PR language, the real message was written on the hearts of those who once dined there. You chose fear over freedom, and freedom always remembers. And now, do you believe loyalty and freedom still matter in America today? Comment your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories where courage wins and justice is served. If this story inspired you, share it. Let's remind the world that no one gets turned away for believing in what's right.